Hi guys, this is the Casual Fan. This weekend will feature the Canadian Grand Prix, the 9th race of the season. Now the season has been a bit of a roller coaster ride until now. It began with a Charles Leclerc win in Bahrain and not to forget a Max Verstappen DNF as well in that race. Since then we have seen Ferrari and Charles Leclerc rise to prominence with a dominant win in the Australian Grand Prix. Funnily, at that point of the season, after just 3 races, if we look at the standings, we had Charles Leclerc at 71 points in the championship, while Max Verstappen, well, he just had 25 points to his name and 2 DNFs in 3 races. To make things worse, Red Bull's reliability was not the only concern. The other concern was the relative speed of the two cars. Ferrari appeared to hold the edge over Red Bull, and in Charles Leclerc, it had an able driver scoring the maximum points available with the car. Now, since that race in Australia, a lot has happened. Red Bull has not lost a race since. In fact, it is on a 5-race win streak. Ferrari has encountered multiple issues with its car, ranging from reliability to tire wear. Right now we have Red Bull leading both the championships with Max Verstappen enjoying a 34-point lead over Charles Leclerc, and overall an 80-point swing between Leclerc and Verstappen in the last 5 races. Now on the other side of the grid, Mercedes has remained a bit of a disappointment. It showed signs of life in the Spanish Grand Prix, but before and after that race, there's not much to speak about the team. As the Formula 1 circus reaches the Canadian Grand Prix, the Formula 1 Championship is at a critical juncture. The championship battle could completely fall apart if Ferrari does not fight back soon. The porpoising / bouncing debate is going to occupy multiple headlines all weekend. And to add to it, there could be some drama when it comes to driver transfers or whatnot. Now, having said that, all that news and all that clutter is, well, it's for some other day. What we have here is the 9th race of the season, and in this video, what we are going to do is keep all that crap aside, make our predictions for the upcoming Canadian Grand Prix weekend. So without further ado, these are my top 5 bold predictions for the Canadian Grand Prix. Now it might be the case that not many would have noticed that Mick Schumacher had a pathetic weekend in Baku. He missed the first free practice session and just could not recover from the lost time. His final qualifying lap in Q1 was almost 6/10 slower than what Kevin Magnussen had done at the point. And what would be slightly surprising to know is that the final lap in qualifying from Mick Schumacher was actually the closest he had got to his teammate all weekend. That's right, the best that Mick Schumacher could muster at Baku was a lap time that was 6/10 slower than Kevin Magnussen. Now compare that to the last 3 races before Baku and you see that the gap between the two Haas teammates, it has not been that much. In fact, Mick Schumacher outqualified his teammate in Miami as well. Now Baku was different because it did appear that the two drivers were almost driving 2 different cars, and Mick Schumacher was far too tentative throughout the weekend. Now, such a drastic drop in form does coincide with Mick Schumacher's crash in Monaco and the public dressing down he got from Gunther Steiner. Whatever was told to Mick Schumacher prior to Baku definitely had an impact on his confidence, and one weekend removed from Baku and racing in Canada, a place where he has not even done a single flying lap, is not the best way to get back to form. The Canadian Grand Prix, well, in my view, is going to be a bad one for Mick Schumacher, and it will be hard to expect him matching up or beating his teammate Kevin Magnussen. This new generation of cars have certainly brought with themselves this rather irritating bouncing phenomena. It just looks violently uncomfortable to see these cars bounce up and down on the straights and do that at such high speeds. Baku was probably the worst in terms of the physical strain it left on the body. But having said that, the Canadian Grand Prix might not be much better. Why? Because first of all, the characteristics of the tracks in Baku and in Canada are far too similar. The long straights, the bumpy nature, the fast speed sections, it's all just a recipe for the most uncomfortable ride on these new cars. Secondly, the track has not been in use since 2019. More often than not, when this happens to a street circuit, expect a curveball or two to be thrown the team's way. Could we see a more bumpier track for the Canadian Grand Prix than normal? Sure, that's actually possible, and that won't be good for the drivers. Could we even be looking at a more abrasive surface and hence maybe multiple pit stops? I think that could happen as well. Overall, the Canadian Grand Prix is going to be a bumpy ride either way for the drivers, and if that's the case, it remains to be seen what action FIA will take to prevent something like this from happening in the future, because the drivers, well, they've spoken. They are not going to keep quiet and they are not going to wait for FIA to take action and let them run race distances in these tough conditions. At the Canadian Grand Prix weekend, expect bouncing to be one of the hottest topics going around. Now, if we are fair, before the race in Baku, Aston Martin was considered unanimously as the 9th fastest car on the grid. The new upgrade introduced in Barcelona, well, it might have looked like the green Red Bull. It certainly did not perform like one. It was a non-scoring race in Barcelona, but since that race, every time Aston Martin has stepped out on track, it has shown an incremental level of improvement in terms of competitiveness. Sebastian Vettel reached Q3 in Monaco. Now, while yes, most of it was put down to the driver's efforts and abilities behind the wheel, this was still a sign of progress for the team. But the true reveal was in Baku, when admittedly Aston Martin started getting bolder with its package as it unlocked more and more speed from it. As a result, we had Sebastian Vettel in potentially the 5th fastest car of the weekend and finishing the race in P6, the best result of the season for the team. Now, the track in Canada, well, it has some resemblance to Baku. Not only that, Aston Martin has admitted that there's still more performance to be unlocked from the car. Is it possible that Aston Martin jumps the final hurdle and takes over the best of the rest status in the midfield? Well, in my view, I'm banking on the team to do just that this weekend. In my view, Aston Martin will be the best of the rest this weekend. Now, in between all the mess created by the bouncing issues in Baku having severe effect on the drivers, the lasting image that stood out with the fans was of Lewis Hamilton holding his back while trying to get out of the car after the race was over. This has caused a bit of an uproar from the fans across all the social media. There is a clear message coming from the drivers as well that they want a solution to this bouncing issue. But amongst all of this, one thing that got swept under the rug was the grave mistake by the teams, where they sent their drivers out on track in cars that were, well, if we are honest, unsafe over a race distance. According to the data that has come out recently, Mercedes was suffering the most from porpoising and bouncing in Baku. What was also revealed by Karun Chandok during the post-race segment in Baku was Mercedes running its car even lower than Red Bull, which resulted in extreme bouncing effect and ultimately had Lewis in all sorts of problems. At the Canadian Grand Prix, Mercedes will have to be extra cautious. It cannot have a repeat of what happened in Baku to happen again to Lewis. And as a result, the team might be forced to run a more conservative setup. A setup that would ultimately mean making a compromise on performance as well. Now, could this compromise setup mean Mercedes getting pushed into the midfield battle? Well, this is what I am banking on. At the Canadian Grand Prix, I am predicting Mercedes to slip into the midfield battle as compared to the comfortable 3rd fastest position it has enjoyed all season. Okay, now believe it or not, even though Charles Leclerc has leaked 80 points to Max Verstappen this season in the last 5 races, he is in imperious form. He has scored 4 pole positions in each of the last 4 races. And if it wasn't for bad luck or Ferrari's incapability in terms of making proper strategies, Leclerc would have been leading the championship comfortably. Now coming to the Canadian Grand Prix, the track has a lot of straights, which should ideally mean a track that favors Red Bull. In most scenarios that would be true, but for the Canadian Grand Prix, the track holds an uncanny resemblance to Albert Park. And we all remember what happened at Albert Park, as Ferrari dominated to a win. One of the reasons why Ferrari was able to dominate at Albert Park was because while the track has straights, quite a few of them actually, they are not your conventional long straights. And this was the key differentiator. Why? Because when you compare the relative advantages of the two cars, Ferrari is quicker and rather better on acceleration, whereas it starts to give up lap time later in the straights when the top speed takes over. That is why at the start of the straights, you'll see Ferrari holding the edge over Red Bull, but as the speed builds up, Red Bull starts pulling away. At Canada, except the start-finish straight and the back straight where Red Bull should have the edge, every other part of the track should favor Ferrari. Fundamentally, Ferrari should be the better car for the Canadian Grand Prix. Now, looking at the key areas where Ferrari has been at a deficit, like tire life, reliability and top speed, there seem to be improvements in place already for at least 2 of these. The new low drag rear wing that was introduced in Baku did cut down the top speed deficit that Ferrari had over Red Bull. And even the race pace in Baku was not as compromised as other races. Now sure, reliability is a concern for Ferrari, but expecting every race to be affected by reliability, well, that would be foolish. Unless it's a grave issue, the team should be in a much better position to deal with any reliability problem that it might face at the Canadian Grand Prix. Coming to Canada, Red Bull is on a roll with 5 consecutive wins. But for the Canadian Grand Prix, I am picking Ferrari to roar back into contention and win the race. Expect a pole position and a win for the young Ferrari driver as he makes his way back into the championship. So these are my top 5 bold predictions for the Canadian Grand Prix. What do you guys think? Do let me know in the comment section. I hope you guys liked the video. If possible, please subscribe, share it with your friends, help grow the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.